Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights.
Before we begin, we'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're recording today, which for me is the Ngunnawal people.
And for me is the Darug and Gundungurra people. We'd like to acknowledge that if you are listening to this podcast in so-called Australia, that sovereignty was never ceded.
We also want to make it clear up front that we can only speak from our own experiences. The sex working community is wonderfully diverse, and as white cis women, we have a lot of privileges within the industry. We can't speak on behalf of our peers who find themselves facing more severe stigma and discrimination than we do.
It is our hope that by creating this podcast, we are able to help humanise sex workers. And eventually, if anyone even listens to us, we can provide a platform to share the voices that represent the diversity of the sex worker community.
We will be discussing adult topics, so this podcast may not be suitable for those under the age of 18. And today, as you can tell from the title, we're talking bodily functions. So there will be talk of bodily fluids and some general things people might find a bit gross. Here we go.
We're going to talk about some of the logistics of sex work, because the reality is that we do use and rely on our bodies for work, and often in pretty intimate ways. Before addressing this topic, though, I just want to talk about the kind of concept of sex workers selling our bodies. I mean, first up, we're not selling anything, like it's a rental agreement at best.
I like that. Obviously, we do use our bodies, but we obviously use our mind probably more.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, heaps. There are other professions that use and rely on their bodies, athletes, miners, construction, even office work can put a strain on your body in various ways, and you still have to turn up and be there with your body, So it's a really reductive thing to say that we sell our bodies because we use them as part of our labour. And definitely our mind, as we've discussed on our last show, compassion and caring and all of that sort of stuff, as well as the administrative side and, the way that we approach people when they contact us, even from the first message, is engaging our brains. So, yeah, it's very limiting to say we just sell our bodies.
Definitely. Actually, I was just listening to ABC's The Drum that was on last night. This is Saturday, so it was on Friday night because Bella Green was on it.
She's so good.
She's great. And they were talking about sex work, obviously. And so but the way the program sort of works is they get everyone that's on the panel to chat about each topic. So Bella obviously was the main interviewee for that section. But they spoke to everyone else about it as well. And there was a surgeon and she was sort of talking about how she spends her life treating people for injuries and for bodies that have broken down as a result of what they do with their body, which for most people is work. And you know, we all have all these injuries. And she was brought up the she doesn't know why sex workers are sort of denigrated for putting their bodies at risk or using their bodies. And it was really nice to hear that from a non-sex worker and from a medical professional.
That's very refreshing.
Yeah, it was very cool. Do recommend checking out. It's just the end of the episode. And I also just think that the idea that, our bodies are sold to somebody and that's inherently bad is like, that sort of suggests that it means that somehow we're giving our bodies away by doing this job and that we're giving ownership of our bodies away. And it's like the idea that somebody owns our body because they've put their dick in it is some really patriarchal ass bullshit. Like that's
very well said.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. Look, so obviously, no, we don't sell our bodies, but we do use them along with our minds to do our job. And that means that there's a lot of practical things that we need to deal with in order to go to work.
So, bodily functions. First up is something that I get asked about by a lot of women who aren't in the industry, civilians or civvies, as we like to call them. The thing is, a lot of sex workers have uteruses, uteri, uteruses, I believe is
Uteri,
the correct plural. Uteri.
Uteri.
And a lot of those uteruses shed their lining on the reg. So periods are something that many, not all, but many sex workers have to manage. And there's a few different ways we can do this.
There's quite a variety of options. Obviously, there are a few workers who take time off, particularly when there's, pain issues and things like that. Some will take a week off work once a month, or at least the first couple of days while they're in a fair bit of pain, which really causes issues with their planning.
Or even just when it's a heavier flow at the start.
All those sorts of things that come up. Look, it obviously would massively affect their potential income and their planning, and just, that's a lot of money to lose over a year.
It's a quarter of the year, isn't it?
It's a lot, yeah.
And then there are some of us who skip our periods, and that's, I think, applies to you and I. Holly, you're also not a fan of menstruating, are you?
It's not for me. No, if I can have the option, I do avoid it. So I haven't had a period in over 8 years. I have the Implanon rod in my arm, which I get changed out every 3 years. I know there's quite a lot of men listening who probably don't understand it, and I'm not going to explain it in the deepest levels, but basically every 3 years I go and get this little hormonal rod removed and replaced in my arm, and that releases a small amount of contraception over that period, which basically means that I think 20% of people that get this rod don't get periods anymore, but it's I think it's 99.99%. Like, it's extremely strong contraceptive or reliable contraceptive. So, that's how I mitigate my period risk. How about yourself?
Yeah, so I will have the occasional period, but again, I haven't had regular periods since I was a teenager. I have the Implanon as well, and I also am on the pill. And I skip the sugar pills, which are, so when you get a packet of the pill, there are placebos in there, and that's what you're supposed to take during the time when you get your period, and then you go back onto the actual medication for the rest of the time. So I don't take those sugar pills.
So that sounds a little bit fussy. Why is that something that works for you?
Why do I have both?
Yeah.
Partly because I'm absolutely terrified of developing a fetus inside me.
Valid.
So
yes.
I use the Implanon and the pill, and I use condoms because I just want all of the contraception that I can possibly have.
Yep.
And that's something, and it also became, when I started working as a sex worker, I was like, it's also really handy to just not have periods.
Yeah.
And for me, the Implanon, the first time I had an Implanon, it pretty much got rid of my periods for 2 years, similar to what you have.
Yeah.
But then the second time I got one, that didn't happen. It seems super hit and miss. And I know for some people who use it, like 20% or something as well, I think, have like constant bleeding and massive issues. So
that
it's
sounds
very,
like a nightmare.
very different depending on the person.
Okay, that's interesting.
And a lot of people, including doctors, would question why I was using both.
Yeah.
And sort of suggest that perhaps it wasn't good for me to have that much estrogen in my body, and particularly with skipping the sugar pills as well.
Right.
And then about 2 years ago, I found out that I have endometriosis, which is a situation where you get uterine cells growing outside of the uterus. It's a whole thing, and surprisingly quite common.
It's more common than people think. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends who are in that horrible boat. Yeah.
So I discovered that I had that, and that was through going to see a gynecologist. And she actually said to me that I had been smashing it because the sort of the non-invasive treatment that they suggest for endometriosis is actually to pump your body with as much estrogen as possible.
Wow.
So
coincidentally had been doing the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I had been doing the right thing. And at that point, so I mean, that was a good 20 years since I first got my period.
Yeah.
No, slightly less. But I'd potentially been actually staving off the endometriosis. And at that point, when I went to see her, we discovered it, and I had to have surgery. But what they, she suggested that I quite possibly had actually, kept it at bay for quite a while, which has made me feel good.
Yeah.
And they also recommend people skipping the sugar pills.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I was advised to do by a few doctors before I went on Implanon, back when I was on the pill. But I was one of those people who was horribly unreliable at remembering to take it anyway. I was a risk. Some doctors said, oh, no, it's awful. And some doctors said, no, it's absolutely benign to skip. You don't have to have a period for most people. Anyway, so...
Like anything relating to women and their bodies, there's a hell of a lot of misinformation out there, including amongst the medical profession.
100%. And there's also a lot of things that we still don't know and that, science is still clarifying and particularly around endometriosis, that's something that seems to be very under-researched. So
yes,
hopefully
massively.
We're getting some clarity around that. So
yeah, good.
Not everyone can take hormonal contraception for a multitude of reasons. It's not an option for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, the side effects can be incredibly serious. So I'd say one of the most common options that I hear used in the industry is to use a sponge. And essentially using a sponge in this context mean you can get period sponges, which are often also called soft tampons, but you can also use other things if you're in a bind. And basically, it is basically a soft tampon. You maybe wet it a little bit and you push it up inside yourself, push it right up to the top, and it stops the flow, basically. Have you used sponges before?
I never have. To me, sponges were always such a wild thing. Like, what? Putting a sponge in your vagina? I always was so shocked by it. Look, in a lot of ways, I've grown up a fairly naive person, and it was just, as particularly entering the sex industry, I was very alone in that. And I remember my second brothel shift ever. I was really nervous and I decided, I couldn't do it. So I called up and told them I got my period. And they didn't sort of tell me, well, you could actually use a sponge, fortunately, because it was a lie and I was just trying to get out of the shift. But it was years later when I was working as a receptionist in a brothel, that one of, we sold the girls, which is a whole, an issue, I think, that we sold the girls
Let's get
sponges.
into that later.
Yeah, rather than providing them, which would be the right thing to do, but we'd charge the staff or the workers to buy sponges from the reception counter. So I became more aware of their function then. And it's because I've been on and off in the sex industry and I've never really been in it at a time when I was, having periods. It's never been something I've had to use, but I certainly worked in a brothel on reception and had workers come to me and say, oh my God, Holly, I can't get this out. Can you help me? Which was a new thing. That's
so. One brothel that I worked at didn't have proper sponges that are designed for that purpose. They had one of those like big yellow car wash sponges.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's just an Aussie thing or if it's just a thing my dad used growing up, but they had one of those in the cupboard. And if you got desperate, you could tear off a piece, which I'm sure isn't, hygienic or healthy. But when you get desperate,
speechless.
You got to do what you got to do.
I mean, it's not that big a deal, but for a brothel, it seems.
Yeah, brothel stories. Let's cover that later.
Yeah, wow.
You would think there's a lot of things you would think.
You would really think they would go to a little bit more effort to prepare for the workers, but wow,
you'd think
they've
so.
just got like a car sponge. There you go, guys. Good luck.
Yep, and you just tear a bit off.
There's a little bit
really
of like
nice.
Vegetable oil for lube as well if you want. I mean, I just feel so disorganised. Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought.
Because they usually have vegetable oil laying around in brothels.
Yeah.
That's always.
Oh, look, the things you find in brothels that other than what you actually
That's
need,
true.
There's all sorts of chaos.
That's very true.
Yeah, it was really sweet having workers come to me and sort of say that they needed help removing a sponge. It's a lot of trust to come to someone and say, hi, I'm having a hard time getting that out of me. Can you help me? And I was always
yes, because it can be quite difficult.
I've heard
I've done a few removals
extractions
myself.
But it's a big trust building exercise and not really a big deal at the end of the day. Look, it's a normal human bodily function and Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have used sponges because even though I use the 2 contraceptives often, well, not often, but maybe once a year, I'll forget to take my pill for a day, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'll just let it happen. And every time I then regret it. I'm like, why did I think that was a good idea?
Why am I having a period?
Why am I having a period? And I feel quite, oh, look, this is going into a different subject, but I feel quite disconnected from my reproductive parts.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with my gender and with my sexuality, but the fact that I can grow a fetus makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. So having a period reminds me of that, and I just don't. It's not a good time. But as a result, I have occasionally had to use a sponge, or I have chosen to use a sponge. I don't have to, of course. And I found them really great. I did have one that went flying out of me, which was pretty funny. I didn't actually notice. And
what
the client was like,
oh,
Jenna, I think your sponge is on the, and I was like, I looked down and there was a sponge on the bed. And obviously I was
That's very
embarrassed.
intimate.
It is very intimate.
Yeah.
But this is it. And I've had a few that have felt it with their fingers when they've been fishing around up there. I think I've got quite a short vaginal canal. So that the good thing about that is I can get them out easily. I've never had issues with them getting lost up around there. And some of my friends' vaginal canals seem to go on forever when I've been fishing around trying to help them get it out. But I've not had that issue, and it has meant the clients have sort of been able to feel it.
I've heard that mine goes right up to the left. So
Well, they go either side.
Yeah,
well, that's
well,
a
mine,
whole other anatomical
when I've
conversation.
gone in for pap tests, my doctor sometimes has gone, I cannot find the end of it. And I'm like, it's right. And she's got to take a sharp left. It's a journey. Yes.
Okay.
Is that TMI?
All right.
I don't know if
Interesting.
we're talking about periods. So
No,
anyway,
definitely not. We'll have to get a doctor on at
So-
some point.
Yeah, we will. So that's a plus that yours is accessible. Yeah.
So yeah, I have had clients, notice that I've been using one, or notice because it's literally there in front of them.
Yes.
Most of the time they don't have that experience, but I've been quite lucky because every single time that's happened, the client has been like, "It's completely fine.
Yeah.
I understand that women menstruate. Like
Yes.
that. It's cool, man."
You're a human being.
And I'm a little bit embarrassed, but I'm also like, well, yeah, that's it, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is what happens.
Yeah. And the final option is to do nothing. You can just go with the flow. You could even charge extra for that sort of thing. Everything's a kink,
Absolutely. And, this is also, the subject of periods is also something that comes up when we have female clients. I really don't understand why sponges and other solutions aren't more common and known about in the civilian world. And I guess, you were one of the people who didn't know about them either. I've had so many.
I was shocked.
Yeah. Well, I've had so many female clients sort of text me the day before or the day of the booking and say, "Oh my God, Jenna, I've just got my period, or my period's lasting longer than it normally does, and I'm really stressed. And do you have any? What do you guys do when you get your period? And I've been like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
no worries. Here you go. These are some options. I've got a bag full of sponges. I can bring one with me. I can help you put it in and take it out if you need. But also, I'll bring my black towels so we can put those down so you don't have to sort of worry about, seeing anything that might embarrass you. And also, I'm fine with it because I am aware that you might bleed, and that's cool."
I also had a female client who was a little bit awkward about that, and she'd experienced some spotting, and she'd had other issues where she'd felt really embarrassed when seeing sex workers in that position, and it's just not really a big deal. Like, if it's not a heavy, if we're not going to be doing sort of a horror scene looking scenario, and it's just a little bit of spotting and things like that, we'll work with it. It'll be fine. She offered to use a sponge and all that sort of stuff, but you know what? I'm sure I've dealt with more unique situations than a very normal bodily function.
Exactly.
And, as long as you're hygienic, that's not a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on to butt stuff.
Woo, butt stuff. So what kind of butt stuff do you tend to come across in your work, Holly?
I mainly do things with other people's butts. I'm not a butt person. I'm actually a butt virgin, believe it or not. I have never had butt sex.
Didn't know that.
I'm saving it for marriage. Yeah, I know. It
Wait, are you
like
actually?
a really weird thing. I swear on my life. Yeah.
You're hysterical.
Okay, oh gosh, I feel a little bit coy at the moment, a little bit shy.
Oh,
Basically,
a bit vulnerable.
I find it, a little bit vulnerable. I find butt stuff really big, like it's a big deal.
Yes, it
I
is.
only have a very little tiny butthole, and I find it quite frightening. So I figure if I'm going to go through that journey of trust, I think with butt stuff it takes a lot of trust in someone else. I'm going to do that with the man who wants to put a ring on this finger. So that's
beautiful. You'll let him
what I'm saving it
engage
for.
with your
which is
ring or something. There's a joke in there about rings.
We'll put a ring on each of our appendages. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel really weird for having that thing, but that's just my little thing.
Have your thing.
I don't mind the odd, butt attention on me, but I'm not a massive fan of it. I definitely will explore someone else's butt though. I can do a mean fisting on someone else's butt.
I've
love
seen
to get all sorts of butt plugs. Yes, we've done a holding hand fisting.
So that was romantic. That was romance. Come
that was
on.
romantic.
Yeah.
That was true friendship, is holding hands and fisting someone at the same time.
Yeah.
And
to be clear, the held hands were inside the rectum. It wasn't our other hands that we were holding.
Yep. Yeah, we were. Yeah, it was very special. I don't mind, doing a bit of butt stuff on other people. How about you? What's your butt situation?
I also do. I do get involved in other people's bums.
Oh, I know.
But they also get involved in mine. And you know what? My view is that if you are old enough to want to put things in my arse, then you are old enough to realise that that's where poop lives. And if you go knocking on Pooh's door, don't be surprised when Pooh's home. Like, that's where he lives, mate.
I feel the same about it.
So,
I've heard people ask about, enemas and all that sort of thing. And I totally, support people doing that. It's good for them. And, I get that that's a big thing for a lot of people, is preparing for butt stuff.
Definitely.
But I think, look, if you go poking around butts, you got to expect some poop. And I don't love it. It's not what I'm looking for.
No,
but if it's there, I'm not going to burn the house down. I've obviously prepared a sterile situation for that, eventuality. So, so like I said, there's a few different things you can do in preparation. People eat certain things. Look, the most important step, which everyone should take, is just washing your butt. I can't say this enough. Let's say it 10 times in a row. Repeat it after me. Write lines right now, please, everyone listening. Wash your butt.
Wash your butt. Wash your butt. Wash your butt.
Yeah. It is so overlooked. Grab a little bit of soap on your hand, reach back there and give it a good scrub, because a lot of people, I think, just let the water run down there.
And you might have to touch it.
You might have to touch your butt. Yeah. I mean,
I wonder if it's because people are afraid to touch it. Maybe they think it makes them gay or something.
I just don't know whether people are taught as children how to wash themselves properly, particularly
I wasn't.
Penises and all of that sort of stuff. I wasn't, and I think it's something probably people don't even realise, that their butts are so dirty. So it's really important. Just a little bit of soap, give it a quick scrub. Oh, beautiful. That's an exciting, inviting butt. Every sex worker out there has had to deal with a client turning up who have just had a shower and they clearly haven't washed their butts. You go, oh God, help me. Oh my God.
You can visually see it, is what we're saying. And we've all had...
You can see it, yeah.
We've all had at least one client who has left skid marks on the bed sheets.
Yeah.
If you're a sex worker and you haven't had that happen, I'm sorry to tell you that it is on its way. It will happen to you.
It's on its way. It's so embarrassing. I've scrambled to pull sheets off the bed sometimes when I've seen. I've gone, oh God, I'm embarrassed for them. And I've talked about it with friends and they've gone, no, let them suffer. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
no,
God,
I always cover it up and hope
can't.
they don't notice, because I don't want them to have to deal with the shame of that, which they shouldn't have to feel shame about. But I mean, if they haven't.
Of course not.
If we're doing butt stuff, then they shouldn't feel shame about it. But if we're not doing butt stuff,
absolutely,
I don't understand why poop is leaving your body.
If you if you just have a generally grubby butt, it's not great. We've just shoved you in the shower. Rub behind your ears, rub your butt, pull back your foreskin, give everything a quick freshen up. We've just spent 2 hours getting ready for you, just meet us halfway, not asking much.
And I mean, it's not, it's still not pleasant for you.
Yeah, for me, it's not too stressful. And I guess one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of, doing things to other people's butts is I don't have a sense of smell. So I was born without it, which it is called congenital anosmia. So I have never smelt poop before. So to me, poop is just not appealing to look at. I've never smelled.
You are so
don't know what it's
lucky,
like.
Holly.
So,
the world smells disgusting. You are so lucky.
people used to tell me that when I worked in a brothel. They were like, you are so lucky that you don't have to smell certain bodily things with some of the clients, and maybe that's why you love the job so much. And I was like, look, I think there's a lot more to why I love this job than my lack of sense of smell, but it definitely, I think, makes certain things easier. And, it's beautiful. I've had clients turn up and they're like, oh, I went to so much trouble to not eat this today so you wouldn't have to smell it on my breath, or I did this activity and I had washed really well. And I was like, oh, God, babe, turn up stinking. I do not care. As long as you're clean, eat your garlic, or do work with paint fumes or whatever it is, because I won't even know. They're really cute about it.
So what you're saying is I should send all my smelly clients to you?
Send them to me. No, I don't mind a smelly person. As long as they're clean, no worries. What about you? Any little, niche stories here?
Oh, well, actually, it's not super, I don't know if it's related. Might go on a bit of a tangent. Bear with me. We'll cut it out if it's terrible. But this made me think about, I was, as part of one of my hobbies that I do outside of the sex industry, how do I describe it without giving away all the details of it? Basically, there's a whole bunch of people around, and it involves a fair bit of standing around and chatting and whatever, and a bit of downtime. So I was just sitting at a desk, and right next to me there was a little group of people having a chat, and one of the women there, her day job is as a nurse. And they were all just standing around talking about her work, and they were sort of they were saying, oh, do you have to do people wee themselves sometimes? Do you have to deal with poop and with vomit and all that sort of stuff? And she was going, yep, that's all part of the job. And they were like, oh my God. And they were sort of saying, nurses do not get paid enough. Nurses don't get enough respect. Like, that's amazing that you do that. And I agree with everything they're saying, like that. There's nothing wrong with that conversation. But I had a real poor me moment, because I was just sitting there going, no one says that about sex workers.
Oh.
No, I deal with vomit and poop and blood and wee, and I have clients who aren't able to go to the bathroom, and I have to get a bottle and help them do that. And I just. I don't want to take anything away from nurses, obviously, but it was just this real, all these people know what I do for a job as well, and I just was like, no one's going to have that conversation with me.
No.
And it made me a bit sad.
They have no idea that you actually deal with that extremity of bodily function. Yeah.
And it's not like every day, obviously, which it probably is a lot more common for nurses. No. And we also, on top of that, have to try and act sexy through it, which is an added complication.
Yeah. If we have to do the stern and nurse routine, then it's like that's a dom thing. That's extra,
That is extra.
Beyond just simple washing, like I was mentioning before, some people like to douche before anal. Neither of us are experts at all in that, so we're not going to go into it, but preparation for receiving anal play can range from a few seconds to multiple days.
Yeah, I have a friend who works in the industry who she does the full enema experience. She eats a liquid diet for 48 hours before an anal booking, which is mind-blowing to me, because you couldn't pay me enough to have a liquid diet for 2 days straight. And she charges accordingly. Her rates for anal bookings are quite high, and justifiably so. Most sex workers who do offer anal on them, or anal play, they do charge extra for it, and they require advance notice, because even if they are a quicker preparer, it's still not something that you can just sort of throw on someone.
So what do you do to prepare?
Well, I actually don't do any prep for anal, like none at all. I mean, I I try to eat well and I have showers, obviously.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I don't do any anal-specific preparation. But at the same time, it's also something I've never guaranteed anal sex in bookings. My body is not at all predictable enough for that. I've never guaranteed anything in bookings, really. It's something that happens when things feel right, and it doesn't if they don't, which I think is really the reality of a lot of sex work and a lot of sex in general.
Yes,
we're not
definitely.
robots. We can't just make our bodies do things on cue.
Yeah.
So often we have to adapt around that, whether it be periods, whether it be IBS or whatever it is, and so does the client, because the client has booked a human being, not a robot, and that's what they're getting.
And then there's all those other little things that like to pop up just before a booking where someone's probably going to spend the next hour or so looking at and touching every inch of your body.
And you just know that if you, say, slice your finger and you've got to whack a big ugly Band-Aid on it, that the very next client you have is going to be one that's obsessed with hands for whatever reason and spends the entire hour 10 centimeters away from your like manky Band-Aid finger. You just know that that's...
Hand? I've sliced myself down there before with a razor and have sort of got not close enough to cancel it, but enough that I go, put a Band-Aid on so I'm covering. And, that's really glamorous.
And you spread your legs and you've got a big Band-Aid there. You know that next client is going to be the one that's obsessed with cunnilingus though.
Yeah, it's just Murphy's Law, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm a farter. So basically this is a running joke with a lot of my clients.
This is why we're friends.
Yeah, it's a running joke with a lot of my clients. I generally, look, I'm not going to say I do it every booking, but if you've seen me for like a year or two, I've probably farted in a booking and we've both laughed about it, or you've never come back, because that's just me, especially when I'm really aroused and I'm bearing down there and putting a lot of pressure.
Yep.
Sometimes a fart slips out. I'm sorry, I'm human. What can I say? I try to be sexy. I try to present a best virgin. Oh, not a virgin. A best version of myself. But sometimes I fart.
Oh, I fart so much. When I orgasm, farting is like part of the orgasm experience. Not always, but a lot of the time. And I think it makes perfect sense because we're like, you're spreading your legs and bringing them back together, like you're letting air in. And then, as you said, bearing down when you come and when you're experiencing a lot of pleasure, there's often like a pushing down sense. So obviously that's going to happen. Yeah. And I find like sex farts, I think, are different to normal farts. You probably don't know, but they don't smell because they're just like an air in and out situation. They're not, I don't know.
Look, my clients are too charming to tell me if they do smell, so nice. I'm grateful for that at least.
True. But there's so many little things, like you said, the cut down there, ingrown hairs are so common, like getting a big juicy butt pimple. You wake up the morning of a big booking and you go, oh, that's big.
I'm lucky. I'm not a butt pimple person.
Oh,
I get them on my face though. They'll turn up and I'll have like a giant, I'm lucky. I don't get the butt pimples, but I'll get a great big face pimple and I'm like, hello, There's a mountain. Would you like to go sightseeing on my face? Yeah, it's glamorous.
Sightseeing. Or if you, like, I have a lot of problems with dryness and allergy. I'm like, I have reactions to everything. So I think actually the first time we met was while I was on a tour in Canberra, and I had this reaction. I still don't know what it was, but my face kind of broke out in this rash and it was red. And I was mid-tour and sort of thought, something's going on with my skin. If I cover it up with makeup, that's not going to be good for it. But at the same time, I don't want my clients to be like, what has she got this red blotchy rash all over her face? So, I mean, I just tried to put light makeup on and I dealt with it. And it was towards the end of the tour anyway, thankfully. Made sure the lights weren't too bright in the room. But these things happen. Or cracked lips. I get cracked lips all the time. And clients might see that and go, is that a cold sore? So there's all these little things that just pop up. And
then, injuries that happen as part of work as well. That's not ideal, I remember you had an injury when you were in the Northern Territory, which was put you off work for a while. I don't know if we want to wait till another podcast to discuss that.
Yeah, I wondered if that would come up. Anybody that has watched the BuzzFeed videos that we mentioned in the last episode will know about that. I think we should discuss that in a different episode, just because it's a bit of a story to tell it properly.
We'll save it. Well, it is a bit of a story. Yeah.
But yes, I did. I had a significant injury and I had to cancel a lot of work.
Another thing we've discussed as well is things like thrush and BV. These are normal things that happen to vaginas sometimes. I went through a period when I was working in a brothel where I was always using the house soap, and I constantly was getting thrush. That was a really glamorous time. So, you're obviously not supposed to put soap down there.
Or different lubes or different condoms.
Exactly. But fortunately, touch wood, don't want to tempt fate. Haven't run into those issues in a while. So, it's not glamorous, but these are normal bodily issues,
A friend of mine is prone to Bartholin's cysts, which thank God I've never had one. And I don't
I've
know.
heard of them,
but apparently they're really difficult to get rid of. They sound incredibly painful, and it's basically a cyst down there. So it would make our job so difficult. And even if you get them drained, apparently they have a real tendency to return and come back, and it just sounds awful.
Gosh, makes you feel grateful, doesn't it?
It does. It's not the kind of job that where you can go to work if you are sick or injured, I think if you've got a bit of a head cold, you're a bit snotty, you can probably still go into the office and just keep your distance from other people a bit. But we can't go into a booking and be snotting all over our clients. We just, we can't do that.
No.
Or
it's not sexy.
No, it's not sexy. It's not hygienic. And it's certainly not the luxury experience that they're paying for. No. A few weeks ago, I got a booster shot, a hepatitis booster shot vaccine, basically. And I thought it would be fine. But then the next day, my arm was so sore, I could barely move it. And I feel like I sound like I'm overreacting, but it had a really bad effect on my arm. And I had a booking that day, and I had to cancel because I was like, it's such a minor injury, but I was like, I can't roll around in a bed without the use of one of my arms. I'm not I can't do my job. And I had to text and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to cancel. It's because I got a needle yesterday. It sounded so lame. But that's the reality of our job. If our bodies aren't fit and fighting, it's really hard to do.
Well, I can sort of relate. When I had the flu shot, what was that, about a month or two ago, that whole week I would be lying on the bed and talking to clients and I'd say, oh, can we just get up and swap sides because this arm is really sore from my flu shot. Yeah. So I can mine wasn't as bad as your booster shot, but it's not those little unglamorous things that we deal with. And then, of course, there's your mental health, which we should probably save for another episode. But it's also important because we have to be emotionally available for our clients, and sometimes we take on a lot of heavy stuff, and that can be really difficult if you're feeling mentally fragile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely something we should explore in another episode. Who misses free and affordable ads and social networks without the anti-sex rhetoric?
Assembly 4 is a team of sex workers and technologists working from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising and social spaces to the sex working community.
They also actually give back to organisations based in harm reduction, sex work and education.
Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their two products, Trist.link and Switter.at, are refreshing and well-needed changes in both presentation and mission.
Both are free to join and open to all. In the words of an Assembly 4 user, from the policies to the language to the advice and tips, it makes such a big difference to feel encouraged and supported instead of policed.
Check out their website assembly4.com, for the word, not the number, for more info.
So, Holly, you last week you mentioned that you had some misconceptions yourself about the industry before you started working in it. So I thought we should break one of those down today.
Yeah, this is sort of coming back to that naivety I mentioned before. Maybe it's not, maybe other people see it this way as well, but this was my take on it before I entered the industry. I used to think that sex work or working in the sex industry would make you hate sex and then not have any interest in it outside of work. So that it would basically ruin sex for you and, just make it a chore or...
And maybe take any romantic...
as a not pleasurable thing.
Level out of it.
Yeah, that was and so I had this perception that once I became a full-time sex worker, I wouldn't enjoy sex anymore. And I've always been a very sexual person. So that was a really frightening thing to think that something that I loved so much might become not enjoyable anymore, which absolutely is not the truth. I am still as horny as ever. I still love sex with my clients. I still am sexually interested in people outside of my clients. I am still super horny. So that was absolutely incorrect. And I think that goes for a lot of sex workers. I know I've definitely heard some of my sex worker friends say they're worn out or they're burnt out or they've lost a bit of interest in sex, or, if they're not getting paid for it, it's not as exciting. Things like that, which different sex workers face from time to time. But the vast majority of my friends that I speak to seem to still have healthy sex lives and healthy interests in sex. So that's really cool. Yeah.
That is nice. I think it's interesting because, you will come across people who may sort of say, when I'm having sex with people who are male presenting, which is obviously not all of our clients, but it is a large percentage of our clients, then they sort of want to be paid for it, and they might be bisexual or pansexual, but they sort of get their fix of men from their clients, and so in their personal life they're only interested in having sex with women or non-binary people, which that makes sense to me. For me personally, I think yes, there are certainly times when you might feel burnt out, or like if I've just come home from a tour and I've had a lot of sex and done a lot of work aside from just the sex, I'm not going to run home and feel like having more, of course. Like I'm going to need some downtime. But I do find that often sex as a job can stimulate my private sex life. Like if I have a really hot day at work or a really good booking, it makes me more and more horny. Like the more sex I have, the more sex I want.
I find the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm quite I read about active and reactive sexuality, and I think I'm quite like reactive. Like I kind of forget that sex is a thing until I'm doing it. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
And then I want to do more of it.
That's interesting. I took a year of celibacy about 7 years ago just to see if I could do it, because I am such a horny freak that I really wanted to.
Well, you just did it for shits and giggles.
I can see, Jenna's giving me the funniest facial expression over Zoom right now, this horror. And I know it sounds weird, but I just wanted to exercise restraint on something and see if I could do it, and I did, and it was actually really good. I know we could explore that another day in another episode, but I actually ended up not being horny at all. By the end of the year, I just wasn't that interested in sex. But then obviously I said, well, I'm going to go and have sex now, and once I was off. It built. Similarly, right now, if I'm having great sex all the time, I just want more. So maybe I'm just greedy. But
on the flip side of that, however, is the misconception. I'll throw another one in. You get a double bonus misconception episode that we are all massive hornbags and want sex all the time. I can't tell you how many clients go, oh my God, I feel so sorry for your husband. When he gets home from work, like you must just jump on him. And I'm like, what? No, we've been together for 12 years. There's not much jumping that happens. I adore our sex life, but we're not like, I don't just launch myself at people. You're paying for me to do that to you, you know. And after a day of me having sex with other people, often I just want to sit on the couch and not be touched for a little while. Yeah. And that's, so I think there's both extremes of it. There are certainly times when my job does make me go, oh God, I just don't want sex anymore.
We're human beings.
But that's always fleeting. And it definitely hasn't ruined sex for me.
Okay, this week for Shit People Say, I'm just going to go through a couple of messages I've received. It's probably not going to be anywhere living up to Jenna's beautiful sports attic thread last week, which was absolutely a highlight. But here's a couple that we thought were good. Okay, so I received a message when I had advertised a blowjobs only service. Blowjobs, pretty standard. That's it. That's all you get. I got a message from a gentleman. Hi, I would love to meet you. What does a blowjob give me? Which I felt that was pretty self-explanatory.
Hopefully an orgasm.
I mean,
Pleasure, maybe?
just a blowjob. That's I don't know what else you're looking for. Blowjob and a handstand. I don't know what he was hoping for with the inclusions. Another one which I really liked was I got a question from a gentleman now just to explain to, well, no, you know what? I'm not even going to explain. This is self-explanatory.
All right.
I got a message from a guy saying, "What is pegging?" And I said, "Fucking you in the ass with a strap on." And he said, "How big is it?" And I said, "Big." And he said, "No thanks." So that was obviously enough to scare him off.
You don't have to do it.
I don't know what the answer was that he was looking for. I don't know whether he wanted centimetres.
Do you know, I've had a couple of people contact me and say, do we have to do like pegging? Because it's listed as something that I will offer.
Pegging?
And they've been like, I don't want that. And I'm like, that's fine, babe. That's cool.
We don't have to do all the things that I offer. And my final one for today is someone contacted me asking, "Are you available?" I said, "I'll be available at 3 p.m. They said, "Are you not available right now?" I said, "No." And they said, "Let me know when you're free." And I said, "Well, I'm free at 3 p.m. I literally just told you that. I don't know what at 3. So, yeah, I don't know what the intention was there. But, yeah, 3 that I thought were quite entertaining.
What about the swimming one?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole story.
Oh.
I did receive a message from somebody asking if we could go for a swim together. I want to go for a swim with you, but I don't want to go to jail. And I said, "Why would we go to jail?" And he said, "Because you're an escort and I'm a client."
Right.
I said, "Well, that's not illegal, you know." And he said, "What isn't?" And I said, "Being an escort or a client." And he said, "Yeah, but going for a swim is."
Is it?
And I said, "How?" Lol. I actually said, "I don't think so." I said, "Lol, how?" And he said, "I don't know, because it's not like a booking." And I said, "Well, how would that be illegal?" Anyway, we never solved why he thought that was illegal.
I need
and to
resolution
this day, I
on
still
that.
wonder
How
what
strange.
what the crime committed is. Very cute.
So sex work is legal, but you can't do anything with sex workers that isn't sex.
Do not swim with your hooker. Yeah. It could be like a gremlin thing. Like maybe they think, you know, as soon as we touch water, police appear. I don't know. Yeah.
That one is wild. It wasn't during COVID, was it? Like there was a lot.
No, this was like 2 years ago. Just a guy who thought that the handcuffs would appear as soon as we got in the water. Yeah.
So the final segment that we have on the show, which we meant to spruik last week and we forgot about, I think, is we wanted to maybe answer a question or two from our listeners each week. And it depends how we go. If everything is getting a bit long-winded, we might just have to do separate question and answer, like bonus episodes. But just keep an eye on our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod. And we will be asking questions because we'd love you to. Basically, we're farming you for content. That's what we're getting at here.
Yeah. We're using you. Do you like being used by us, you dirty boys and girls?
And she says she's not a dom. And that brings us to the end of our episode. Now, we mentioned last week that we have a Patreon where you can get access to bonus episodes. You get our episodes a day early. They will always be ad-free episodes. And there's a bunch of other little perks in there as well. And we're lucky enough to have had a number of people sign up. And actually, most of these people signed up before our first episode was released, which was...
That's massive.
We were both so incredibly touched by that. Really put us in a good place to start and made us feel really supported. This is a totally new journey for both of us, so it really meant a lot. So we'd like to thank those people. We have a giving somebody who is Mal. We have 2 generous somebodies, and they are Adele and Bruce.
We have a few very generous somebodies who are the Alice Gray, Pete, Spaceman Dan, Darwin, Steve, Timmy and Lachlan, and 2 extremely generous somebodies who are Aaron and Pretty in Pink. And that's all we've got this week, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.